What's up? It's Sierra.
Hey, it's Ebony.
And welcome to the Real Play Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to the Real Play Podcast. This is Sierra.
Hi guys, it's Ebony.
And today we have a very special guest, Dr. Anthony Andrews. How are you doing, Dr. Anthony?
Hey, I'm well. Thank you for asking. I appreciate you guys having me on today. I really do.
Yes, I'm excited.
Yes, we are very thankful that you came on today. We're going to just give you a quick little chance to introduce yourself to everybody so they can get to know you really quick.
Okay. Like you guys said, my name is Anthony Andrews. I'm from outside of Wilmington. I grew up outside of Wilmington, North Carolina. I went to Shaw University for undergrad. Then I went to A&T, North Carolina A&T for my both my master's and my doctorate in rehabilitation counseling and counselor education. So with that, I provide services related to any kind of disabilities, whether it be psychiatric or physical. So I see an array of clients, a variety of clients rather, individuals, couples, and families who are being challenged with issues from, trauma, substance abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse. So my specialties are in trauma and substance abuse. And so I see a variety of clients and serve a lot of communities who are challenged with that. Like I said, I actually teach as well. So I'm at a university where I'm teaching online as well and in person to the courses of that nature of trauma and addictions and rehabilitation. So I like to define myself as a clinical rehabilitation counselor, and it's a mixture of just clinical and rehab. But I'm glad to be here.
It sounds like you got your hands into a lot of different things, all dealing with mental health and rehabilitating people. So let's just start off by asking you, what made you decide you wanted to go into that profession?
Yeah, well, I originally wanted to go to law school, and I was in the process of going to law school. My brother, who was 5 years my senior, he was already at A&T in the rehab program, and he kind of convinced me to actually get into the field. He was liking what he was doing there, working with a lot of youth, adults as well, but majority youth at the time. And he kind of convinced me literally just to change paths and just go down that route. And I realized I was working with a lot of at-risk youth, and that was going to be my passion if completing law school. But I was able to do that from a therapeutic standpoint. So I took that route. I ended up loving it. Like I said, some of my first jobs were actually in Greensboro. Then I decided, I really wanted to just keep going with it. And that's when I went into the program at A&T and decided to go for my master's. And after that, my brother kind of ventured out. He was the first one to try to, say that, we need to start a business and do this ourselves. He kind of convinced me to jump on board, and it's been like that ever since. So, I'm definitely been blessed.
I love that story. It had me smiling. It's like a real passion, and that's what we need. We need people in that field that have a passion for helping people, especially people that look like you, because there's not really a lot of you out there, African-American men, psychologists. Or maybe there are a lot. I just haven't seen a lot.
That's a good point. I thought there was a lot too, and it wasn't until my friend, one of my fraternity brothers, he reached out, and he doesn't mind me sharing the story, but he reached out trying to seek a therapist, and he was saying that he wanted a black male therapist. So I'm like, all right, cool, And I was being so naive to it, thinking like, well, I'm a black male therapist. I know there's got to be others. And I looked on Psychology Today, and it took me forever. And I was just searching. And I wasn't able to find a lot of black male therapists. And so I felt like defeated because I was going back to them with nothing really to offer. I had a couple guys I can give them, and it just didn't work out. And those people were like overbooked themselves. And that's when it really hit me, like the representation wasn't there. Because traditionally, you see on TV, what does a therapist look like? And usually it's a picture of an old white guy, or an old white lady. And so the representation is not there. So then you have the stigma that's associated with it to go with that. And all of a sudden, a lot of people aren't seeking therapy. A lot of males aren't seeking therapy. So It's definitely interesting.
And it's also not enough to be, first of all, to be a Black counselor, but then also find someone with this, what's the word that I'm looking for? The speciality that you're looking for. So
Right.
let's say I need healing from trauma. So
Right.
to be a Black counselor and to deal with trauma, that's still, that's a minority too.
Right, and it's getting into the field. I knew that the trauma was there. My generational trauma. My family was challenged with a lot of generational trauma. And it doesn't have to be the trauma that we all think about, like physical abuse and to that nature. But not voicing your feelings or suppressing your feelings can be generational trauma in itself. Because it goes down to people who aren't able to express themselves in a relationship, who aren't able to express themselves in, relationships with coworkers, with friends, and it just trickles down. So it can definitely be an issue. But I realized, I said I wanted to dive into trauma because I first was diving into addictions. And I realized that with people who were addicted to any kind of substances, usually had a background of trauma that was happening, and especially in our community. And this is the way that we were coping with it, dealing with it, and trying to handle these situations that weren't effective for our community at all. So I started diving into trauma and sexual abuse, and right now that's a big percentage of my caseload. People who are challenged with trauma, whether it be physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, anything that you can think of, really. So it's a lot.
So I want to go back to the communication part and not being able to use our voice. So recently we did an episode on racism, and I was telling Sierra during this, after the episode, I was listening back to it, and I said, this is the last time I experienced racism. I was calling a specific event. And then I was telling Sierra, you know what? That's not the last time that I actually experienced racism. Like, why am I like downplaying the fact that I see this every day? And so to your point with communication, we often experience racism, but it's hard for us, even in that moment, to be vocal. So I'll give you an example. I was at a grocery store, and you can look at my nails aren't done. And this lady cashier, she says, do you know a bootleg place where I can get my nails done? And I'm like, why are you asking me? There was a lady in front of me. She was nice. She was a white lady. She was nice. She was talkative, but she never asked her that. And so I just thought that was weird. And I didn't, instead of using my voice to say, hey, I'm not, why did you ask me? Or just ask some clarifying questions. I just stayed quiet and left. Right. And I find myself doing that in probably most situations in which I face racism or some type of discrimination because of the color of my skin, right? So how can we kind of navigate that area? Because I feel like that's I talk with friends too, and that's not anything uncommon.
No. And what we call them is micro aggressions. So microaggressions, that usually happens when you might get those comments like the nail comment, or white people come up to me all the time, want to talk about, the only conversation you want to have is like, you try to have a conversation about rap music or hip hop, or it's assuming I might not even listen to that. You don't know, or have a conversation about football or something like that. These microaggressions come off all the time. And, to navigate through those things, you really just got to be vocal and be transparent with people, no matter how uncomfortable it makes someone feel. And I think as Black people, as a people, we've been so used to making others feel comfortable, no matter in what space that we're in. Even in our own spaces, we tend to cater to the feelings and the comfortability of others in that space. And our job now, I believe, is to be vocal and be ourselves. So those individuals can realize that, no, I can't just say whatever I want to say without them feeling, or without me feeling uncomfortable. Because your space and your comfort level matters the most here. You can no longer suppress yourself for the hopes that someone else will feel more comfortable. Because if not, we don't break the cycle. It just continues. And it's dangerous to go down that road. It really is.
So with trying to not suppress being vocal, What are some tips? Because just as you were talking, only thing I can think about is just practice. But what are some tips that we could use?
Right. So calling people out. I know it. I know everybody is not the most controversial, but in that situation, hey, do I look like I know where a bootleg nail salon is? And it is really, and see, the thing is, a lot of people don't want to be assumed to be the angry Black person, or the person that's that.
Exactly what they would say.
That's exactly what they will say. And that's what I mean by making people feel comfortable. And until we are able to be ourselves, then we are continuing to do that. Some other tips I can think of is just educating people. Say, no, all people don't do that, or all Black people don't do that. I don't know. I'm in the same situation as you. I'm going through COVID right now as you. So why would I know? And just educating people and bringing them back down to the reality. And usually what happens is those people feel so dumb for saying something like that. It's like, okay, well, maybe I'm ignorant to this situation. I need to do better. And it's our job to kind of challenge people to do that. It shouldn't be our job. So let me take that back. People should educate themselves. But if they are uneducated to the situation, then it's our job to make sure we educate them, because people will take that on and think it's okay to do elsewhere.
Yeah. So as Ebony was just recall, and I think we talked about this, like it happened like 2 weeks ago, right? Where you were just at the grocery store. And so one of my questions that I wanted to ask you, when we had our last episode, I kind of recalled the first time I remember somebody saying something, racial to me. It was first grade, and I was called out of my name, and the Black B was what I was called first grade in kindergarten. First grade at recess.
Wow.
So that was my first time. And I remember crying, but you don't know what it means back then,
right.
But you just know it's not right. So just to ask you, can you, and especially in this time, like we're all thinking back of all the different times we've encountered something like that. Can you think of the first time you remember either being racially profiled or somebody said something to you?
Yeah, I remember being discriminated against for certain things. But as far as like straight out racism, I can remember another microaggression when me and this is in college, and we were actually, I don't know if we were in Banana Republic or Gap, probably Old Navy, because we didn't have, it was definitely didn't have no money. So we were in there, and I remember the I guess not the cashier,
probably the manager.
The man. They came over and asked, came to us out of nowhere and literally said, hey, if you're looking for the more baggy jeans, then they will be over here in this section. I'm like, wow,
Wow.
So this is during the transition from baggy to somewhat,
fitted.
Cut, then the skinny, then fitted, so I'm like, so now we're even more offended at this point. But it's the fact that, you really think that all Black people do this, or you really think that all this happens. But a more recent one, this is probably about 6 years ago when I was first buying my first home. And I know that I went into the bank, and the bank is where the racism is just at its all-time high. And I went to the bank, and I had a loan officer tell me that my pay stubs, because we were self-employed at that point, he told me that my pay stubs looked fishy, and he used the word fishy, and because it was a jump from me not being a clinician, from me being a clinician, into my salary or whatever. And he said he thought I fabricated my income,
Wow.
And it was one of the most offensive things I've ever been. And I was really like hurt. I was really like I didn't know how to really express myself because I was so angry. And I knew this wasn't the place to be angry at. So I really had to calm down and use my own skills to really calm down and realize what I needed to do at that point. I had to end up calling the district manager of the bank. She had to actually come down, apologize, put someone else as my loan officer. And the guy still works there to that day. I go in there. I love to see him. But because I ended up going through and I ended up getting approved and everything. But it was the fact that you had to do that. And that guy, I had talked to other people who went to that bank, and that guy used to turn people down and tell people no and say things like that to multiple people. And you think about how many no's and how many Black people he turned around and what that does to the economic system or the socioeconomic system within our community, to say, well, how many Black people actually own property, or how many Black people actually are able to get these business loans or to get these loans for their family. And if you have 10 people that do that, or 10 people that get denied every single day like that, or every single hour, just imagine the impact that you're having on the community. And that's why that equity can't be there, because, you know, we're fighting for equality and we're not getting equity, and we're not able to grow as a people. So, you know, that really was a huge one for me, and I've always remembered that.
Wow. It's just mind-boggling how one person can affect the community. One person's racism can really affect generations.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you really think about it, like if you're not able to get that loan and you end up having to stay in the projects and never buy a home, and then your child is raised there and then their children are raised there because it's the same thing. It's just
right. Ecological trauma.
That is
ecological trauma.
So I do want to dive a little bit into trauma. I'm not trying to make this a different podcast, but have you ever heard of the book The Body Keeps Score?
I haven't.
So it's a trauma book, and just reading the book in general, I just learned a lot about trauma and how trauma affects us in different areas. And so just us as a Black community, you know, so let's say someone grew up and they were abused physically and mentally and emotionally. So that's one layer. And then you also have just generational trauma on top of that. And then just some trauma that you're going to experience being Black. How do you mediate those different layers and spaces?
Right. And like I think I was mentioning a few seconds ago about this, the ecological trauma and what a child or a person may have been through or come from. So you find what they call multiple traumas in one case. So like you said, let's say this person grew up in a poverty-stricken area. When they stepped outside, they may hear gunshots. So when you step outside, you may be seeing drug deals going on, or this stuff has an impact on how people are affected mentally, emotionally, what they're able to take, what they're able to deal with. Then you have back to the income and the equity. If a parents sometimes have to work, they're outside of the household. So a lot of abuse happens when parents are away from the household, because a lot of kids are actually left alone in households because of families having to work or parents having to work 2 or 3 jobs. So now you have another layer on top of that. Then you may have witnessed domestic violence in the home, or you have witnessed all of these things, and now you don't know how to actually communicate in your own relationship because you're only doing what you know. And to unpack the layers for me, when I step into a session or even go to my own therapist, because I do want to say that I'm a big advocate of therapy, and I make sure that I see my therapist at least, if I can, at least twice a month, you know, to make sure that I'm getting my own, you know, oil changes, as I like to call it. But you know, I think that you have to unpack each layer and make sure that you're doing that by really being truthful and vocal about, you know, why that situation is the way it is. And what I mean by that is I believe that everything in the past affects who we are. So an absent father may create the best father in the world, you know, to their kids. Or an absent father may create another absent father. You know, you just don't know. But either way, it's coming from the past, and we're kind of shaping that and saying, well, how is that going to affect us? And if we don't work through that, then we can never unpack those layers and know that, okay, well, this is the starting point of why this stuff was happening or why I am the way I am. And it's kind of like accountability and owning up to that and knowing that I need to get the help and being okay with saying I need to get the help. And the stigma in the Black community is probably one of the most or the biggest barriers. It is the negative stigma associated with going to see a therapist or seek counseling.
So I am an advocate for counseling. I talk about it many times on this podcast, and we often talk about unlearning, like that work that it takes to unlearn some of the emotional trauma or just trauma in general. And we kind of want to talk about the steps that it takes to actually get to counseling. Because as you mentioned, we as a whole collective don't subscribe to counseling. Do you know possibly the backstory on why our community is so against counseling?
I think our community was just mistrusting of anybody that didn't look like us to tell us anything to do. I think we've been led in places in the past We can go from, experiments or to medicine. We can go to all types of things where our community has been led and really led in a horrible way. So a lot of people are mistrusting of any kind of healthcare system, including, you have Black people who don't want to go to a doctor to get a checkup because they don't want to be prescribed medicine. And because, for years, this was done for people that don't look like us. I mean, Taraji P. Henson went on the Breakfast Club, and I don't know if you guys saw the interview, but she talked about, the career days or, a kid coming in, or you ask a Black kid, ask them what they want to be when they grow up. And you will hear, I want to be a basketball player, or you will hear, I want to be a doctor. You will hear, I want to be a lawyer. And you will hear, I want to be a scientist or a race car driver, but you rarely hear, I want to be a therapist. And you have to really ask yourself, you can be a doctor, but the go into the specialty of therapy. And why don't you hear that? Because it's not promoted. It's not on TV. You don't see it in cartoon books. You don't see it in children's books. You don't see it in, if you don't see this growing up, you don't know. So I think a lot of people are, like I said, mistrusting. I think the affordability of therapy is an issue. I think that that's a huge barrier. A lot of time when you're self-pay, and this is a whole nother podcast, but you get into like self-pay, you can see a therapist as many times as you want. But let's say you're on a certain insurance panel. Let's say you're on Medicaid. They may give you certain authorized units to go see a therapist per year. So now you're limited already about how many times you can actually see a therapist. Then the government won't reimburse a therapist for services unless you are diagnosed with something when you come into that session. So that's why you have a lot of misdiagnoses when children leave therapy offices, because a lot of therapists are just finding something at that point to say, well, let me get reimbursed, because they don't have the money to come in and just see me out of pocket. So I have to give them some kind of diagnosis. That's why you see a lot of kids who just need attention and I guess routine and structure. They're diagnosed now with ADHD, with ODD. Wow. You have all these behaviors that come out because now some doctors say, hey, this kid is hyperactive. Let me give him medicine before the age of 9. And now the personality is getting taken out of the kid. Now, some kids need Concerta, Adderall. But I'm a behavioral first therapist, meaning that I'm gonna try my hardest at the beginning to make sure that we don't have to use medicine. But if I see that it's there, then okay, yeah, I can recommend that, right? But you have a lot of people that just don't trust the system. So when you have a Black therapist, female or male, people are a little bit more trusting that. And Black women have been at the forefront of this movement for therapy. I have to applaud, like I said, even you being an advocate, Black women are pulling Black men to therapy. They're pulling Black men to church, pulling Black men to doctor's appointments. So you ask like, who's the reason for this movement? It has to start with the Black woman.
That was actually the one question that I often find many questions during podcasts, but that was the one question that I wrote down that I wanted to make sure I ask you. And it's how, as we as Black women, can uplift and support our men, friends, brothers, husbands.
Right. That's it's one of the most selfish things that I ask a lot of women to do when they bring or they come to counseling by themselves at first. They come and they say, well, I really want to get my significant other, my partner in here. But he's real stubborn. And I have to always say, and this is one of the most selfish things to ask, but ask that person, ask him, will you come with me? Because I need you to support me, and then you're not saying, hey, well, you need therapy, but no, come to support me. And let me get you in the door, not in a trickery way, like let me get you in the door, but in a trickery way, let me get you in the door.
I'm about to say, it sounds a little trickery.
Right. And it's so important to get in there, because once you get in there, you're able to hear from a third party to say, well, you know what, it may not be all her, it could be me. And if she's willing to do all of this, and if she's willing to put herself vulnerable on Front Street, then I can do a little bit more. Then it really comes like, well, this person care about me. Or for your brother, or for your uncle, or for your cousin. Let's not even think about significant others, but think about family members. I'll go with you. let me go with you for the initial session just to meet this person. And I tell my men a lot of times and ask the women to say, hey, just ask them if they can talk to me for 5 minutes. Just give me 5 minutes of their time. And if they give me 5 minutes, free of charge, let me go to 5 minutes with them. Because now I find that like a challenge. I love getting more and more men in there. But what I find is a lot of Black women, they'll bring their, Black sons to a Black man. But sometimes are hesitant to go to a Black male themselves. So you find a lot of people bringing that in there. But also I've been finding a lot of Black women who don't want to see other Black women as therapists. And I have a lot of Black female clients. That's a whole nother episode as well, about some of the reasons they tell me. But I think, like I said, that you'll see like they're pushing and pulling every single person to get in this door. So I just want to do a study to figure out like, why do you all recognize the importance of it? And, why can't we see that sometimes,
I think that kind of leads me to my next question, because I was going to ask you, what are some ways to kind of get men who may not really want to go to counseling, healthy ways to get them to try to decompress? But I like how you said you invite them for like 5 minutes to just try it out for 5 minutes. And that 5 minutes probably turns into a new client.
Right. You have people say, hey, I don't need counseling. And by the time it's an hour, and I know when I used to do military counseling on Fort Bragg's base, I would go and I don't know if you guys knew that, but I used to go and do military counseling with our service members. And sometimes they'll pull me in and just say, hey, I want to talk about, career things or whatever. They'll say anything to get in the door. And you get back there, there'd be so much relationship issues, trauma, or vulnerability that comes out, but you have to get somebody in the door. And right now it's easier than ever virtual. And you put your headphones on, you get to a closed-in space and you just have that conversation. And the way that I try to do it is to normalize the conversation. I'm very transparent in saying in any space that I go see a therapist. And it's to that point where it becomes so normal. If I'm sitting at a table and I say, well, you know what my therapist said last week, and everybody's, oh, your therapist said, okay, you see a therapist? Oh, either they can say, I see a therapist too, or, well, let me see who you say. Who do you see at the end of the conversation? Who do you see? Here go my card. Here go therapist card. This is who I see. And by the time you know it, you're normalizing the conversation where everybody feels okay with having a therapist. Because if somebody doesn't feel okay, then it's muted and it's hidden, then it's going to be less likely that people are going to want to, reach out to their own therapist. So we spread awareness.
Spreading awareness.
Yeah, I think that's good. I don't want to again take this conversation anywhere else, but I'm such an advocate for counseling, seeing a therapist. My major ended up being psychology in school, and I don't think up until that point maybe we had guidance counselors, but I didn't really realize that you could go into therapy or become a counselor. And the first time I went to counseling, she helped me actually set like healthy boundaries. And so just growing and seeing leaps and bounds within myself, I'm always like pushing people like, oh, go see a therapist or just go talk to somebody. It's always good to have someone isolated who do not know you to have a conversation with, even if it's just one time.
Right. Mm-hmm. See, people think counseling is like this, where they use it as this, oh man, I'm at my last tipping point and I have to go see a counselor now. I'm gonna hurt somebody. But counseling, that may be true, but the counseling is more of a preventative thing. And that we don't use it as that way sometimes. This is to prevent something from happening or to prevent you from reaching your tipping point. And that's why it's important for everybody to get a check-in. And I know I referenced the term oil change a few minutes ago, but no matter if you got a brand new car or an old car outside, that car still needs an oil change. So everybody has to get checked on. So we're okay with going to the doctor to get a physical, but we don't want to sit down and just get your mental health checked on. And so it really doesn't make sense if you think about it. And what I had a hard time doing was when I was working with the military, I was seeing so many people from different cultures and races take advantage of counseling, and we not take advantage of counseling. So, they're understanding that this is important, you know, and still not a lot of men, like it's not a lot of white men that was doing it, but it was more than us. So, okay, you're seeing something important here, you're taking advantage of it, then why aren't we? You know, and it's might become some of that historical trauma, but it's still like that stigma in our community that we go to, you know, just the family members, or we don't talk about it at all, or we pray about it. You know, all just goes away. And this is what we've been we have to be so ingrained into our faith for so long, because that's all we had, and that's all we had to rely on. And you don't want to strip someone's faith away. You can keep that, but say, okay, on top of that, you know, hey, we can still see a licensed professional counselor or licensed therapist to still help me navigate through those ways. So.
And also it being important, I think us as a community, we really don't realize that sometimes people don't have the capacity for you to lean on them with certain problems. So instead of using like your friend, your mother, your cousin, your aunt as your psychologist, and it's okay to talk to them, but sometimes we don't even say, hey, do you have the capacity to talk to me today?
That's a great point. That's a great point. And that's what I go around preaching. Don't dump your bad day on someone unless they are in the space to do so. So if I had a bad day, before I pick up the phone and call someone or tell anybody my bad day, I'm like, hey, are you in a good place right now for me to dump my bad day onto you? Because it happens so easily, because like I said at the beginning, we as a people are so used to being supportive and there and available for people, even if that means sacrificing our own needs at the moment. And especially Black women. And I'm not trying to speak for you guys, but you just let me know if I'm wrong. But a lot of my female clients come, and they're taking on so much and being this supportive role for so many people, whether it's a partner, whether it's their kids, whether it's their mother who they are trying to appease, whether it's the job, coworkers, dealing with all of these things. You've been taking stuff all day, and then when your friend call and say, hey, let me tell you about the kind of day I had. And you're like, okay, this is how I'm about to end my night. Before I take my bath, I'm about to end my day with you telling me about your bad day. And now I'm rushing to be supportive that way. So it's just boundaries, what you said earlier, Ebony, about your therapist working with you about boundaries. Boundaries is a huge factor here. And that doesn't mean that you're a bad friend, you know, or a daughter, or a bad partner. You know, boundaries is boundaries for your own sanity. So.
And also, so I'm in counseling now, obviously, seeing a therapist. But again, I love to go just to have someone to talk to and for it to be preventative. But one thing that we talked about is healthy boundaries. Not healthy boundaries, I'm sorry. Knowing what a healthy, balanced relationship looks like. And I think, I know for me, I was just like, I don't even think I know what that looks like. What does it look like? So we're working to identify what the healthy, balanced relationship looks like. And then also too, this something I didn't think about is like when someone comes into your life, not how to identify those red flags, but how to identify those green flags. So that is very important.
Right. I didn't know what a healthy relationship was growing up. You know, I came from a single parent household. You know, other people in my life were divorced, or they weren't married, or, you know, have dealt with things like abuse, or, you know, in this toxic masculinity, what a man is supposed to do, or how is he supposed to act, and can he be vulnerable? Can he cry? I remember like in public, what's it called? PDA. That was a huge thing back in the day. Like, you know, you get clowned if you're showing any kind of affection, any kind of emotion. So you have to be like this tough guy all the time. And then you say, well, you know, what does that really mean? You know, and you get into a relationship, you get into a marriage, and, you know, you hear people talking about, you know, what a man or what gender roles or what that's supposed to look like. And people don't realize that, you know, in a relationship, you know, both people are submitting throughout the whole relationship, because and you have to be, and that takes vulnerability and transparency to know that I'm submitting to the needs of another person. I'm submitting to how a person may feel, or I'm care about how they may feel, and in hopes of getting that same energy in return. But for years, not knowing how to do that, or not knowing what a healthy relationship looks like, then you're really just basing it off of TV. What couple on the television screen that made it, if you didn't have anybody to look at personally. So that was a difficult one for me to navigate through.
So I just want to go back a minute ago when you were just talking about the part that kind of caught me off guard was that a lot of the psychologists may feel as though they need to diagnose you with something in order to get paid. Right. Which is probably true. I get that. But I have recently, since COVID started, the pandemic, I've seen online a lot of different psychologists or people that I'm following on Instagram saying that they're going to be providing free sessions to people. And I didn't go look to see if there's like a special dollar amount you have to make or if it's just for anybody. Right. But for them to give it to us for free, what can we do for those psychologists to give back to them?
That's a good point.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've done. I mean, I had, I probably, let me count. I don't know the exact number, but I know at least 7 clients that have lost their job due to COVID. So, you have clients say, hey, just want to check in. I don't have any more insurance. This would be my last session. So then as a therapist, you sit there and say at that point, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to say, hey, okay, well, see when you get some insurance, or are you seeing those people for free? So you continue to do so because it becomes part of your routine. If I see you, Ebony or Sierra, and I'm having a relationship with you guys as far as a client therapeutic relationship, it's still a relationship nonetheless. I'm going to, dive into your feelings at a respectable boundary, but I'm not going to be able to just cut you off like that. It would be unethical for me to be able to cut you off like that because I know your story. I know what's going on, and I know how much of an effect that can have on you. I think to give back to a therapist is simply just I'm processing as I'm speaking now. That's a great question. I never thought about that, but it really just if that therapist is in private practice, maybe repost their page, some small things you can do, word of mouth, and sometimes you got to just put out good karma. I mean, sometimes you can't respect nothing in return. You just got to put out good karma. I mean, sometimes there's nothing that you may not be able to do. But I think that there are ways to do that, even if you have to shorten the session, or maybe even provide just brief, what they call mental health wellness checks, making sure that you're still, in tune with people, even as we go through this pandemic. And, therapists, small businesses, and everybody's been applying for things, and there's ways for, there's grants out there. So the therapists themselves, we have to do our part with getting the aid that we're getting, because the aid that we're getting or that is offered to us is for those situations to help individuals who may not have it at that moment.
Okay, good. Because I was like, I would love to do something for them, but I just don't know what would be the right way to go about it. Because I don't know if you can just say, here's $20 or $30, if that would not look right. You know what I'm saying? So there's got to be ways to, if that's all the people have.
Right. And they do, you mean if you were a client or you just period?
If I was the client.
Right.
So with the post are for completely new people. It's just anybody who needs it. It's saying you can come to us. We're giving away free sessions.
Right.
So if I was one of those people who didn't have the money and then I saw, oh, wow, this is free and I really don't have anything because I lost my job, but I need somebody to talk to, what could I do to give back to that therapist? Right.
You really gotta let them. I mean, if they say it's free, it's free. I know you want to give back, and that's what I mean. Sometimes that's that good heart in us that we want to just give. But sometimes, we're clearly coming because we're in a bad place right now. We may have nothing to give, and sometimes you really need to fill your own tank so you can go out and pay it forward to someone else. So just imagine how many lives people save every day from coming to a therapist, getting a good therapy session in, then going back to a family member or a friend who you're not providing therapy to, but you're in a good headspace to be there for them. So you're essentially you're paying it forward, and everybody you come in contact with. If you're having a bad day, I'm pretty sure everybody's gonna know you're having a bad day, or vice versa, So that's that energy that you're putting out there. That's what I mean by you got to put good karma out there, because you know, you being in a good space helps everyone out, not just you.
That's a good way to look at it.
So, not to switch gears a little bit, but I do want to talk about everything that's going on social media and in the media in the world right now, especially with Black men. How has what's going on, the recent events, affected you?
Oh, well, you know what? This is you know, somebody asked me this again. We was talking with a group of friends, and I'm numb to the situation. I'm not numb to the cause, if that makes sense. So, I mean, we had just saw Ahmaud get you know, killed like what, weeks earlier. We watch him running down the street for a jog, and he get killed. You know, he gets killed. So then all of a sudden now you come back weeks later, and this happens to George. So you're like, oh man, again. Like this is insane. This is insane. So you can't be numb. And I tell people it's okay to be numb to those emotions, and it's sad that we have become numb to them. But you can't become numb to the cause. But it's affected me. It saddens. It's sad to watch. You know, I know those same feelings. I've been in situations before where I've been stopped by the cops, and me and my friend, we were riding down. This is like in 2011, maybe. We're riding down from home. We get stopped because they said we fit some profiles, some people who were doing some big drug deals. You know, I didn't have a license on me because it was at home. The cop said I couldn't drive back. I was driving a stick shift, so my friend, she couldn't drive a stick shift. So it made her drive. So I had to really like shift the gears for her and teach her how to drive a
Would have been through.
While we're driving home, and you know, he's threatening me. You know, talking about I'm gonna go to jail. You know, so all these, I've been in these situations, so it makes you cautious, which is a bad feeling about what you do, and how you act and how you perceive, how you're perceived, and you know, you get stopped, and it's so sad that you get stopped by the way that you look, whether you have a beard, or for me, like if do I look aggressive? Do I, you know, and the cop really doesn't really back off until, you know, you speak a certain type of way, or they see that you speak with some kind of articulation, and it's horrible. You know, it's horrible that people go through this every day, and you know, so I'm pissed. I'm upset. So I'm not going to mask that. I am upset. I'm very upset. And like I said, I think I'm numb to it, to the point where I know change needs to happen. And I think that even just getting off a session from another Black male I was just seeing, he told me today, like he just confused because he wants to help, but he doesn't know how to help as a Black man. So what do you do at that point when you don't know how to help? And then as a therapist, sometimes we're like solution focused people. So you want to provide some kind of solution or steps. And so then we become powerless. And that's the theme I've been getting from everyone. You know, you seem really powerless. Like you go protest, you get shot with pellets. You go to work, your feelings get dismissed.
Very much so.
Right. So now you're masking yourself into this space because people already perceiving you as the militant guy, all right, or the militant woman in the space where here they go again on their soapbox. So now I'm asking myself, why not? Why not be militant at this point? Why not do this? Because I think that's why the rage, you see people having this rage here. So that's why people are like protesting, rioting, and you know, you see a burning building outside, right? And so for people who are naive to the situation, it's hard to be naive to a burning building. So when you walk outside, even if you don't get or understand anything that your privilege may offer, you have to notice a burning building. And even if you don't get anything out of that building, but to say, you know what, why is that building burning? Now you're saying, now somebody can educate you on, you know what, well, this building is burning because of this. So although, you know, I don't condone a building getting burnt, but I can see why that message says, you know what, now it's kind of like, I hate to reference this to this, but when Moses saw the burning bush, you know, this bush is not supposed to be burning, you know, so it automatically just brings attention to the situation, and you have to address it. So yeah.
You know, in my own life, we've talked, and I want to say, everybody take a sip of water or whatever you're drinking every time we mention vulnerability on an episode, because I think it's so important. I probably have mentioned this on every single episode. So recently, I've talked about I struggle with vulnerability and watching Brene Brown, and she says that we as Americans, we tend to kind of mask different emotions and try to not feel. So if we are trying not to feel angry and trying not to feel rage, anger and rage is the same thing, but you understand what I'm saying. Then you're also going to mask like joy and happiness and all those good feelings. And so what I've been doing with this, everything that's going on in the media and just watching everything happen in the world, I actually been sitting in these feelings and like feeling everything and making sure I'm taking it in and also educating myself. It's been hard. It's been uncomfortable, but I feel like it's needed. If I turn a blind eye to what's going on, I can't be mad at other people do it too.
Right. And see, anything like that, 'cause this is a traumatic event. This is a traumatic situation right now. I don't think people don't really want to take it to that point. But first off, seeing somebody die on every scroll of a thumb is not natural. So, we've been witnessing death for the past 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Like you see it, and even if you don't want to watch this video, you probably most likely have watched this video. So now you haven't watched it.
I have not watched the video of George Noramad. I can't. I'm one of those people.
And that's a whole nother point. Yeah, protecting your space, protecting your bubble. So I'm proud of you. I'm glad you said that. Because I'm too easily tempted to.
I didn't watch it. I heard some of the audio though, which is I don't know if it's better or worse.
We're good. I'm glad you don't get that a lot. I'm glad people are really protecting their spaces because people make you feel less than for like, oh, you didn't watch the video, you didn't do this and that. No, you can protect your space. But yeah, back to my point. This is traumatic. And we have to really recognize that as being so, and knowing that, anytime in the traumatic situation, it's not good to suppress it. And that's how nightmares come up. That's how night terrors come up, because people suppress those emotions inside. And really with PTSD, those emotions come out in the unconscious. So you have to acknowledge it. You have to wave at it and say, hey, I acknowledge you here. I acknowledge these feelings. I'm accepting these feelings and I'm gonna work through them. And so you taking all those emotions in and allowing yourself and saying, no, I'm okay to be upset today, or I'm okay to be sad today. You're not suppressing it, because once you put that mask on trying to be happy, then what you're doing is you're sending out a representative for yourself. And how dangerous, how draining is that, sending a representative out for yourself, with your family, with your coworkers, with your friends, with that friend that's going to call tonight trying to dump your bad day onto you. That's a lot of representatives that you're sending out. So then you start asking yourself, well, who am I? Or what am I allowed to be? Then in your relationships, it carries over. You start suppressing things that you really want, that you're not getting. You're becoming content, and your job satisfaction goes down because you're being content there. And by the time you know it, you're like, who are you?
That's a whole sermon. And
it's a whole nother episode, right? We got like 3 episodes out of him already. Right. But something that you said dealing with, going to work. And so I have been going to work, and I am the only African-American woman in there right now in my office.
Wow.
So I come in yesterday and I got a very beautiful email from our diversity and inclusion person.
But of course.
But her email, I felt her email to my core. Like I almost cried. It was the very first email I saw, and it said, "We see you," was the subject line. And I've worked with her before because I worked with the African-American group that's at my workplace. So I knew she meant it. But I haven't got a text or a call from my direct management. And I emailed her back. I was like, thank you for sending this to all of us. I appreciate it. I know you felt it, but I can't really, she asked for any ideas of what they can do, any tips for them to help everybody. I was like, just acknowledging it. I haven't had anything from my management. She's like, if you understood how many managers are upset with despair and have emailed me wanting to know like what ways they can have these conversations, you wouldn't even be able to imagine it. And I'm like, I get it. But at the same time, a simple text from my management that says, I see you, I understand. Are you okay? That's all we asked for. I mean,
Crickets.
I'm dumbfounded. So
Right.
yes, I've been wearing a little bit of Afrocentric stuff this week because I want them to know, like, I have to go to work. I can't really call off at this time.
Right.
I'm the only management there. But yes, I'm gonna have my head wrapped. I'm gonna put on something. I'm gonna make sure my shirt said when they go low, we go high. Like I've got it all, and I just want some acknowledgement.
Right.
Outside of diversity and inclusion, because that's her job.
Exactly.
But I knew she meant it.
Right.
But what do we do? The people that have to go to work and we're like, it's almost like it's happening again every day when nobody says anything to you.
Right.
And what's harder too is if you're not physically at work and no one can physically see you, you can't even express anything to them. It's just like a normal day, normal conversation.
Right.
No, I'm just telling you from going into work, they don't express it to me, the ones that I work with.
Wow.
Nobody wants to have the conversations.
Right. And that's on Jersey Day at a job, I challenge all the people that go into like corporate America, wear your Colin Kaepernick jersey, wear it, make them feel really uncomfortable. And I have a lot of questions. Like, first, I don't know why so many white people hold spaces as diversity and inclusion officer. That's one point. But then another one I have is to not recognize it and not to have that space is really disheartening. To get that email, to get that text, because you do it because you have to, and to not know that I'm being heard or being accepted, or my voice is being heard at a smaller level, that's disheartening as well. I think that it's very important to know that in these spaces, like I said before, it's not your job to make anyone feel comfortable. That's why I want you to continue wearing whatever you're wearing, making sure that you are making, because this is the issue. I don't want to go on a rant, but if we don't do that, then your white counterparts would now say, oh, well, you know what? I know this is all going on outside. This is happening outside, but Sierra, she doesn't seem to have a problem with it. And so if Sierra doesn't have a problem with it, then you know what? It's really not an issue because I work with a Black woman. She's cool. And it's important to know that we have to be unified more than ever. So yeah, Sierra has a problem with it. Now I need to recognize in this place that it's all white space that I need to acknowledge that. And another thing is, it's interesting to see how white people, they ask like, how can I help? And I like that they ask that. That's fine. But then I put this on Facebook today. I want all white people to be okay knowing that there may be nothing that you can do right now. And because we may not want you in our spaces right now. So you can ask these questions and, put your post up and say that you're all for the cause. But I have an issue with the lack of reciprocity when it comes to how we rally together for certain causes, specifically sometimes thrown by white women. And I know that when it's time for our causes to be heard and marched out with, sometimes we don't get that. I've been seeing it more lately, but in the past, it's like we have an issue. We don't see all of the races, but when it's a global issue on something else, Black people, we're the first, remember, like I said, to be very supportive, to be very giving, and we do our all to make sure that other people feel comfortable, but we may not get that in return. So you got to know how to set those limits.
So here's a question. What if you work in a space where there is Black people, but no one's mentioning it? Maybe you have a Black manager, Black coworkers, but there's no conversation being had. So you just have to still, regardless of if your coworkers are Black or white, you have to still not say anything.
Right.
Like suppress it. You feel like you're suppressing it. But I did actually talk to one girl today, one lady, and she was Black. And I didn't even know she was. We were IMing all day. I was like, let me come meet you because you're doing this work for me and you're in a different office. I walked over and I was like, oh. And so we talked about the work. And then at the end, she was like, so how are you feeling? And then I stood there for another 30 minutes. And we kind of talked quietly because, you're in, it's just a conversation for me and her. It's not something that you really want everybody else to hear, but we went down, talked about everything. And had I not walked over there, I would have never known she was Black, and we would have just been back and forth on the instant message. But she actually asked me, I wasn't going to bring it up because you really don't know where everyone's mental state is to want to bring it up, especially in the workplace. Because the worst feeling is to break down and really be in tears at your job when you're trying to be as professional as you can during something like this. So that could be why the Black people are kind of like, unless they know you.
Right.
Well, I mean, a lot of them know me, but I have pulled, like, I've talked to one person, but even with that, I pulled back because you could tell people really don't want to have the conversation.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, who do I, not that I feel like I have friends, I have people that I can talk to, but I'm like, this is another whole part of my life that I got to sit here and work 8 hours a day,
Right.
all day, and pretend like nothing is going on in my other world, my real reality. So
right. I think it's so important for Black people to stick together. And, you know, I know a lot of my friends and family, they have groups within their work group. So they may have a group chat, or they may have, you know, they may go out for food, for drinks after work. This is important for people to really come together. And because if you see somebody, you know, you really, the head nod is not enough anymore. Like, oh, I see you as a Black person. That's not enough anymore. You need to go announce that person, meet that person, get to know that person, because you guys are helping each other out. I mean, like, social groups were formed, Black social, I mean, like, I know my fraternity was at an all-white institution. You form together in this white space, and that's what comes about the social groups and the social clubs and the fraternities, because you have to band together. And when you know that you're being oppressed, so if you know you're being oppressed and you're in an oppressed space, you know, why not you know, connect with your own right then and there? But I think a lot of people, this also comes from a place of trauma. Assimilation is really the first go-to. Let me assimilate because I don't want to be this or that, because I do want to move up the corporate ladder or the ranks of my job. And I know me being myself may not provide me the opportunity to do that. And that's when you start going into the equity and, you know, Black businesses, which is a whole other episode. Right?
We're on 5 episodes.
We're on 5 episodes. 5 episodes.
No, but so what I'm hearing you say is that basically in my situation, in Ebony's situation, we may feel as though, hey, wait, let's not say anything. We don't really know how they feel, but really we should just open our mouth and say, hey girl, hey bro, like, I see you, like, we're in this together. Let's just band together right now. And we can talk. Let's talk about this. Let's get our feelings out. Let's get our work done. But let's not avoid the topic. Right.
Because, you know, no matter where you think white people want to hear it or not, they're still looking at each of you and asking, I wonder what they think. I wonder what they think. And they may not be vocalizing it, but they want to know what you think. So they might throw little questions out there like, man, you know, they're looking at the news. It's crazy what's going on today. And want you to say, yeah, let me hear your opinions on it. They want to see where you stand on the issue. And you know, you can stand on the issue without standing directly on the issue. You can let them know that, hey, you recognize something, because even if you weren't Black, there's other people from different races, you know, in different communities are still acknowledging us that are non-white. So they're saying, okay, well, they're not Black, but they're still recognizing there's an issue here. This stuff is just not in the country. This stuff is global at this point.
It is.
So people are recognizing this. So to be blind to it, it speaks on the privilege and the, you know, just the ignorance.
So I went to work the other day and had a meeting first thing in the morning, and it's only me and this white guy on the call. And he asked me how I was doing, and I said, fine. And then I was like, well, how are you doing? He was like, life is golden. And I was like, I bet it is.
Yeah,
life is golden. It is.
Life is golden. Life is golden for the white man. Life is golden.
But then even, I was gonna say, even sometimes when they ask, like, how are you doing? Or when they end a call, they'll say, stay safe. And in my head, I'm like, are they even thinking about the pandemic, or are they thinking about what else is going on? Like, I really can't even tell where they're coming from and what they're even asking about, because they're not direct enough.
Right. Their stay safe is vague, like you said.
Yeah, very vague. Like, so are you COVIDing me, or are you saying don't go out and, you know, protest? Like, which one are you caring about right now?
And they know it's both. They know it's both. So it's sad, man.
Yeah, I also find it hard to have those hard conversations. So I have well, they listen to the podcast, but I'm going to say this anyway. I have a group of old coworkers that I still talk to. All of them are white. We have a chat, and one of them has asked me if I'm okay, and she's been posting, and I don't believe any of them are racist, but I also don't know I've kind of stayed off the chat because I don't know how to have a conversation about what I'm going through, because I feel like they might say they get it, but you don't really, they probably don't want to hear it all the time. Like, oh, I see it in the news. I feel sorry. I don't know what to say, but I also don't know how to navigate the situation. I don't want you to keep talking about it, you know?
Right. I may not be I'm not the best person in white spaces. I'm very blunt. I'm very vocal. And I don't really take into account. I just feel like we've been so oppressed for so many years that I just can't be muted. And it doesn't really do well. I've like quit jobs before. That's why I'm in private practice now. I mean, and if I'm teaching somewhere, it's most likely the HBCU always. Because I mean, I just don't. I go in spaces that I know, not that I can't navigate through those other spaces, but I kind of get fed up, and I know I need to help change from the outside sometimes before I dive into the inside to like overthrow something in a sense. But I know that I realize that when we navigating through these white spaces, we just don't know how to, if people don't take accountability, we don't know how to deal with that. So as soon as they see something we don't like, it's like, okay, this person is whatever. So there's this great book out. It's called Overcoming Our Racism. And it's an older book, not that old, but it's by Daryl Sue. And he's an Asian guy, actually. And it's a very controversial book. And I know we read it through our doc program. And one of the first chapters, he goes out and says that all white people are racist. And it's like this controversial statement. And he explains why he says that, because he says that the powers that be, we don't have the power to be racist, because the racism is involved in the structure and the system. And we're not in that place to even be racist.
Oh my gosh, I heard my friend say this before.
Right. We can't even oppress another party right now because we're not in a position to do so. So right now, if you went up against a job with another white woman and you got the job, most likely in her heart and her mind, she is subconsciously thinking that I should have gotten that job over you because I'm white. Now, whether you want to say that out loud or whatever, we know that, you know, your chances of getting the job because you are white may be higher in the system that we're in, especially with corporate and government jobs. So my point I'm making is I don't believe that all white people are hateful. So all white people may not be burning a cross in your front yard, and I'm okay with that. So if you're a racist, you know, hey, you know, you don't like me.
Let me know.
Let me know. I would rather you just tell me. But when you become to be hateful, when you're just stopping me from getting opportunities and equity and loans, that's when I have an issue. When you are pouring out hatred and burning crosses and fighting and doing things like in Charlottesville, that's when that's hate. So racism, I think white people say, hey, you know what, maybe I am racist. You know, maybe I am racist because I do expect these things. I know these privileges exist and I don't want to give back my privileges. And I may think that I am a superior race because I've been in social norms. I've been on the top of the food chain for so long. Am I superior? But do I hate you? And that's another topic. But
another episode. You on number
another episode. I'm on number 6. Yeah, so it's deep. But yeah, you should check it out. It's a good read. He ties it all back together. And I hate to go on this rant about this book, but the stereotypes, you know, when the stereotypes we have, when we walk past the door of a black man, you may hear door locks, you know, but when you hear that, like he's Asian, the author of the book, but he says his stereotype is everybody thinks that he's good at math or that he's good. So the stereotypes are different. You're still stereotyping somebody, but you know, our stereotype versus others are just like completely different, you know. So that's the issue there.
Yeah, and I think I said on the last podcast that I was gonna, you know, strive to have these hard conversations because I do enjoy the friendships that I've made and cultivated outside of our race, but I also want them to understand, and not that they will fully ever understand, because it's a difference in when you are actually Black than trying to understand, because I can never understand what it is to be white. So I am going to start having these hard conversations and and not only with people that I know, but like we talked about before, if the woman's at a cashier who asks me, you know, where she can get her nails done at a bootleg shop, I need to speak up about that too. And even I didn't mention this, but I had paid like over $100 and something for my groceries. It was expensive, you know, for one person. Right. But I saw the look in her eye that she was waiting to see what I pulled out to use to pay it. And
like to see if you were going to use an EBT card.
Yes, I feel like she was looking, and I don't know if I'm going to say this. I felt like she was she may have been of lower class in her community, and she wanted to identify somewhat with me.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But we're not the same.
Right. People automatically assume that we are either it's either that, or they want to make sure they're one step above you. Well, at least I'm not doing as bad as the black person. And you know, that's an issue. And also just making sure sometimes this is what I don't like. Sometimes our white allies that we have are people that have been oppressed before, whether that's been bullied before, being discriminated against by their social class. Because a lot of white people are discriminated against for being poor, against you may see some poor people who hate rich white people, you know. So you have some of those who identify, or some black people white people that grew up in black neighborhoods who identify like, you know, I have some white client, no, I think I'm black. I call myself black because I was in these oppressed environments. You think that the only way you can identify with our culture is through our music and are being oppressed. But we need people who didn't come from oppressed environments just to identify with us. And that's when the real change happens. I don't want you to identify with me because you are poor. I may not even have grown up poor. You know, I could be rich and still deal with these same issues because I'm black. Yeah. And that's where the confusion comes right there. So it's crazy. These roads are tough to navigate.
It's very tough. And what I actually wrote online yesterday is sometimes you don't really know who's on your team in your face and talking about you behind your back. Right. So one of my friends, she actually posted a meme of the whole George situation. Right. But it was like a funny meme. It was next to it. It was a white person on the other side of it. And he was like, oh, well, I can't breathe. And he's got like a COVID mask on, and it's supposed to be funny. And she posted it.
Not the time.
Exactly. So she posted it to say that she's on our side and that she can't believe that somebody would post this and how insensitive it is, and that we went to elementary school together. And she was like, the person who posted it went to elementary school with us. You're friends with them online. So not even know, you never really know if somebody really is feeling you or if they're just tolerating you because they've got to, or they know you and they're like, okay, she's really cool, but if stuff goes down, I'm with my people. And and they're really, you said there's a difference between being racist and then the hatred, but sometimes, you know, that doesn't come out until something like this, and you never knew. Like, they could have been talking about us every day at the dinner table, telling, you know, black jokes. And now it's starting to come out because they're starting to want to use their free speech and post stuff. And now you're really seeing who is racist and who's got that hate in their heart. And you never knew. And I graduated from elementary school 2000.
Right.
20 years.
Yeah, I remember me and my mom, I was in elementary school. She taught school. She taught third grade for like 30 years. And I remember this custodian worker that we were cool with. We loved her. And her car broke down one day, and Miss Archery, and we took her home, and she had the biggest Confederate flag in her yard. And we're like, oh my God, we did not know. We did not know this whole time. You just don't know. And so, you hear these things and you see these things, and you're like, I really just don't know who's beside me or who's really for me. And it's a hard situation to be in because your trust level just goes away.
And I have some people that I went to, like, so I did like this small rec league where I kind of mentored and helped cheerleaders. And so I had like a captain on the team, or I don't know what you had called me at the time, but even I've tried to add her a couple of times back on Facebook because we was really cool at that point, but she's never added me, and I know what it is. And then I see certain teachers that treated me golden. I would have never known.
Right.
And just to look and to see certain stuff is very disheartening because it's kind of like, was I believing a lot, or did they send their representative?
Right.
Exactly.
You ever seen you see the pictures of back in the day where people were being lynched, and you see all the white people out there looking at the lynching.
Mm-hmm.
And I read this article in my program. They were talking about how everybody at that lynching may have not wanted to be there, but in the need for their role to say that, you know, I'm with you guys, I'm choosing my side. I'm standing up there and looking at a mutilated body now hanging from a tree, and not saying nothing. And this is the same thing that's happening with those other officers that are sitting there watching this lynching, this theoretical lynching right here that happened to George. You know, now I'm watching to be a part of this group, to choose my side that I'm on, but I'm not saying anything. I'm not getting this person down. I'm just being a part so people won't isolate me. And there's one thing that white people do not want to happen, to be isolated from their privilege and be put in the same role as what they would define as a black person. Like, the things back in the day, the spray paint nigger lover, you know, and once you got that was the worst thing you could think of for a white person, to be associated with anyone like us. So, so now we're seeing that today. We see people are standing around a tree, looking at a lynching, and when you don't say nothing, that's how I feel. I feel like you were in that picture looking at our bodies hanging, burning from a tree.
I think it's so complex too, because we as a community, sometimes we don't stick together. We'll rather talk about and shun and dismantle a person to one up them to be better than to collectively say, we're all in this together. Let's pull together our resources. Let's love on one another. Let's do better, be better. I think we're seeing more of that, but I don't think it's not enough yet.
Right. And I'm thinking about this as we speak right now, but I think I have a really black page. And I say that, I don't really follow a lot of white people, and I know a lot of white people don't follow me. So, you ever stood behind somebody like the grocery store or the line, you're looking at their Twitter and like, man, my Instagram looks nothing like that. Like what you're viewing, I probably see 2 white people on my timeline ever, so so I'm really not into their world, and they're probably not really into mine. So I was like, let me challenge them. Do I need to follow? I'm just gonna start following like random white people to see what they think, and have them follow me back, and then so they can see. Because if am I posting all of this stuff out? Who is the message getting to? So we have this thing in grad school, or like we're like, okay, so this is a whole nother point, but they have these. We write journal articles, so we're writing journal articles like you guys may write journal articles, but who reads journal articles? Only other people, most likely, that are in school. So now a bunch of collegiate students are reading other people's work from different colleges and universities. It's just rare, because you know why? Because the journals cost, and the only way that you have access to the journals is if you're affiliated with the school. So you're most likely you're not going to purchase a journal article. So that's how I kind of feel with my Instagram. I'm posting to people who already know what's going on, and but who do I need to get the word out to?
That is very interesting that you said that, because this CEO that I used to work for, he used to always send me articles, but it was from the Harvard Business Review.
Right.
And I never really read it, or he would go on it and read it all the time. It's tons of resources, tons of information, and I think he pays for it. But I'm pretty sure most of my peers don't even know that it exists, or wouldn't even go on and read it.
Right.
So that's really interesting.
Right. You're sitting there and it's like, okay, what am I doing this for? It's just, we have to get the word out to different people. And that means going out into uncomfortable situations. So that means you telling the lady at the store, that's you telling the lady at the work, that's your white Instagram. The white space that you're in, if nobody's speaking out. So that's why I've been putting a poll out to my educators at PWI. It's like, we need you more now than ever to comfort those Black students that are forced to be in their white space. we need more educators at HBCUs to recruit to our universities and our spaces, to bring our talent, to bring our, and not just athletic talent, to our scientists, our engineers, to these Black spaces. Because, you know, white people, they will use you for your talent, because we know that we are very talented. So your talent already needs white spaces, and you know, we just have to bring it home sometimes, or make sure we're eating our own.
So I'm a little ashamed in the fact that me growing up, when you do well academically as a Black person, sometimes they put you in a different category, right? They put you in underclasses, they put you in, the more you keep going, you find yourself, and it's only people, you know, you have a few of you, but most of the people that you're in class with are white students. And so when I got to high school, that's all I was going to class with. And I think I mentioned this on the podcast too, but I ended up taking college English in 12th grade. So I dropped down a level, which is like a TPCP, that's what they called it. So I wasn't in honors English my last year, but I took a college English and then like a lower English so that I could have all my credits. And I noticed that they were doing like sentences. So like I hadn't done sentences since 8th grade. And so how far advanced was I over people that I looked like me, I was cool with? I would not have no clue unless I took that class. And so, and then the way they groomed us was for us to go to not to a HBCU. So I went to a private white school in Charleston, South Carolina. And all I seen was people, there was people that looked like me, but a lot of people that didn't look like me. And then I think I moved to Columbia, then I moved to Atlanta, and I lived in Alpharetta in Atlanta. And there was people that obviously didn't look like me. So I moved here, and this is Chocolate City. So I'm like, wait a minute. Is there a black people on every corner? I'm like calling my friends, like, I just went in the grocery store and all I see is Black people. So I'm so ashamed, and I am thankful for moving here because I became more adept with my culture. And then I'm just like learning more information. And not that I feel like I wasn't Black before, because obviously I grew up a certain way. I am Black, so I do know Black culture, but just more in depth about learning versus what somebody is telling me.
Right. And you know, Black people, I know that you know, we only put privilege on white people sometimes, but we know that growing up, even having an education, that we are privileged, you know. So you have to know that, because everybody wasn't afforded that opportunity to get what, you know, you have, what I have, what you have. So we know that, but you have to recognize and know that, you know, I attained these things, but now I'm coming back to make sure that my community is okay. There's nothing wrong with leaving the community, as long as you know that you're pouring that back in to whatever you do. The goal is to get to these places, to take this information
and disseminate. Yes.
There you go, to disseminate. And if you keep it all for yourself, and you know, some people get in those spaces and they are glad to be the only Black person there. It makes them feel good. You know, I never feel safe if I'm the only Black person. You know, I never feel safe. You know, I'm looking around for the other Black person to give that head nod that we referred to earlier. You know, I need to see somebody else Black because it makes me feel comfortable and safe. And that's something that I have to work through personally, but my own mistrust. But those spaces like that, you're conscious enough to recognize what's going on here, and why aren't there that many? Because you're a talented individual, a smart person. Oh, we need your talent. We need your talent, but when you still go in and apply for this kind of loan or this kind of this, you're still a Black person, you know.
Right, and my name is Ebony, so they know automatically.
There you go.
You're right.
There you go.
You are right.
There you go.
I don't know, Raven. I can get away with Raven, I think. I can get away with it.
Possibly.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. I like it.
Well, this has really been a great conversation. Like, we have unpacked a lot.
Yes.
It's just the crazy times that we're in right now.
Right.
It's almost like, and I see the memes that are supposed to be kind of like funny, but just the way the history books are going to be written for 2020.
Right.
Like, we're really living in history, and we see those movies, like you see people marching and doing all that stuff in the movies, and you're like, oh man, if I was there, I would do it.
Right.
Or I would love to be a part of that cause. And you don't always have to be out there in the streets to do your part. Right. You can easily do it online. A lot of us do stuff online, sign petitions and everything like that. But to really know that we're really going to be in a part of history.
All day, definitely.
Can I ask one more question before we end too? Like, I don't have any kids, so it's two parts. Another reason why me and Sierra did this podcast, because we do want to give this information out. We want to educate, especially those in our community. And one reason I really want to do it too, because I'm like, people back home that look like me that don't have access to this information, I can teach everybody or like give that information. But anyway, so I don't have any kids, and how can, two parts, we teach our kids to about racism and about our culture, and then how can, I guess this is not really related to this, but I want to know how as we as a community can give back.
Right. I think it starts early. Like I have a 1-year-old daughter, and I make sure that we make sure that we read her Black books every night. You know, we make sure that she's getting poured into her Blackness. You know, Black hair books and loving yourself, and you know, it has to start there. Like I said, if it's not the cartoon, you know, Doc McStuffins on Disney Channel. I mean, stuff like that. But you have to pour that stuff into children. There you go.
Oh, come on, Cabbage Patch Dog.
There we go.
This is my Cabbage Patch from when I was a baby.
Oh wow!
And you see how dingy she looks. But yeah, my parents, I was not allowed to have white Barbies.
There you go.
They wouldn't let me watch the movie Snow White. They wanted us to make sure that we saw things that looked like us.
Right.
But yeah, this was because she had the thicker hair. They're like, yeah, this is what you about to play with. So you really do gotta start them young.
Right. You have to start them young.
My parents, I watched everything.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. So yeah, and to the point where I thought that, you know, going into a doctor's office, I expected to see a white man. Going into a courtroom, you expect to see a white man. And going into these spaces, you're expecting to see white. And you know, I'm gonna tell you guys a story. It's my grandfather. He passed away at 102.
Wow.
Yeah, but he received his GED at the age of 90.
Yes, granddaddy.
Yeah. He was big on education. So the president of the community college, I was probably about, how old was I? Maybe 12, 13, maybe 14. I don't know. I can't remember the age. But the president of the community college came down because they had did an article on my grandfather. And he came down to congratulate him. He brought his kids with him. And so they're in my living room. My mom was away at the time. My brother was away, which is me and my grandfather and the president of the community college and his kids. After talking with him, the president asked his kids to go over there with my grandfather, and they all took a picture. So I'm like, okay, cool. After they leave, my grandfather had a tear rolling down his eye, and he said that I can't believe that he would let his kids take a picture with me. And I immediately became angry, and I said, well, Granddad, they should be honored to take a picture with you. You're 90 years old. You just got your GED. They should be honored. And that's when I knew the generational gap there, that what he experienced and what he'd been through, it was so hard and difficult where that would never happen. And he was just so shocked. And I was just angry when the tear came down his face, because it just let me know that, you know, how bad times were and how devalued we were or unvalued we were. And, you know, it's really just made me angry, and I tell this story a lot. But I get why that happened. But we're just coming from such a place, and we still got so much, you know, we got so much further to go. Yeah. So teaching that, you know, I was never really taught that at the beginning. So you go through this movement now, like, you know, Black is beautiful. Like, we deserve these things. We're kings, we're queens. And we have to instill that into our children and make sure that they know that. And we are educating ourselves as well throughout this process. So
yeah,
that's good. What's the second question you asked? It was a 2-part question.
It was, how do I give back and help my community?
Oh, yeah. I think that with you, you know, your skill set and whatever you do, you can't forget your community. So if that's giving counseling for me to young Black boys and young Black girls, that's, you know, for free or whatever. Speaking engagement, this podcast is giving back. I mean, you know, when you're bringing awareness to situations, you don't know how many people, you can track it, but how many people tune in and say, man, I'm looking forward to this. Like with my podcast, my line brothers, they get on. He's a teacher and he does his planning. He listens to the podcast every morning at 9 a.m. And if we don't put an episode that night or that day, he challenges me like, where you at? I need this. It gets me through my day. So you have to know that what you're doing sometimes is you're already giving back. And giving back doesn't always look like serving at a homeless shelter. We are giving back to a group of millennials and under sometimes, and that's in different forms than through media, through posts, through speaking engagements, through whatever you think you're talented enough to do to make sure you get it out there. So I think you already are giving back.
Yeah, sometimes you always feel like you can do more, but
right. Then do more.
True.
Then do more.
Well, before we go ahead and end this, we want to make sure we give people a chance to figure out how they can get in contact with you if they wanted to follow you, if they wanted to hear about your practice, or even listen to your own podcast. So can you let us know?
Oh, okay. This is the plug right here.
This is your plug.
Now, I'm not hard to find, I guess. You can follow my Instagram at Tony_Drew. That's my Instagram. You can find all my information to my counseling practice. You can follow that page at Andrews Counsel PLLC. So follow us on Instagram as well. And we do have a podcast as well. It's called The Charting Room. So we may have to link one time, do one big Zoom, let you guys introduce yourself. I want to introduce my people to your people. So we can make one big episode, one of those collaborative episodes maybe one day. I think that would be dope. People coming together. So so that's The Charting Room, literally The Charting Room on Instagram and IG and Facebook. So we pump a lot of stuff out, but it's all centered around wellness, and it doesn't have to be mental health, but wellness in the whole. So I urge everybody to just make sure that you find your peace. And make sure that you extract anything out of your life that doesn't provide you peace.
Yes, I love that. Keep it positive.
Keep it positive.
All right.
I appreciate it, guys.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Andrews.
Yes, Dr. Anthony Andrews.
Oh, man,
yes.
I appreciate it.
And I'm sure we'll be talking to you soon with the other 5 episodes, 6 episodes that we've got.
There we go.
Yes, you have to come back.
Yeah, we got a relationship now. It started right here, so we good. We got to keep this up. We got to keep it going.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, guys. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on all social media platforms at The Real Play Podcast.
We would love to hear from you, so leave us a comment, DM, or voice note. And don't forget to come hang out with us on our next episode.